Good evening. My name is Rob Elkins. I'm a graduate student at Bellevue University in its International Security and Intelligence Studies program. Though it may be hard to imagine, the South Asian deterrence dilemma involving Pakistan, India, and China is slowly but surely headed to what I would consider a regional Cold War. With none of the three states being party to the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, there are very few limitations placed on New Delhi, Islamabad, or Beijing that could prevent an arms race in South Asia. India blames China for the buildup of nuclear weapons within the region, while Pakistan blames India. India is stuck in the middle, as it has had military conflicts with both Pakistan and China over border issues and such within the last 5-6 decades. And the nuclear age has just intensified the probability of mass destruction between the three states. With the rise of China, then India, both on regional and global scale in economics and now military might, what once was primarily an India-Pakistan rivalry has turned into a China and India rivalry and a combined Pakistan-China versus India rivalry. China is now Pakistan's largest supporter within the region and is Pakistan's #1 provider of both military and nuclear weapons capability. Pakistan enjoys this partnership as it tries to strategically keep on pace with India, and China in turn enjoys this partnership as it tries to outmaneuver India through the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean regions. Until China's rise in power, India only concerned itself with Pakistan, and as such, it maintained a strategic force that was primarily concerned just with Pakistan. However, with the threat of China now places on Indian sovereignty through a quickly growing conventional warfare buildup and a conventionally superior nuclear force over India, New Delhi has had to ramp up its own strategic forces, both conventionally and nuclear. Prior to now, Beijing gave minimal credence to India's nuclear might. But now that India has demonstrated that it has ICM capability, and as such can reach Beijing and other major Chinese cities, China has had to reevaluate its deterrence policies concerning India. No longer is China willing to use a minimum deterrence concept regarding India, but it has changed its deterrence stance to one with a second strike assurance capability. On the India-Pakistan front, the mutual deterrence policy both governments espouse is that which is called credible minimum nuclear deterrence. However, neither government really knows what that means, and that can be dangerous as the deterrence concept lends itself to ambiguity. Even within India, for example, different government factions do view credible minimum nuclear deterrence differently, with experts on one side viewing this concept as one, where as long as there is a survivable nuclear force left after an initial attack against that force, if the remaining force can exact unacceptable retaliation against the aggressor, that is good enough to be considered credible minimum nuclear deterrence. However, on the other side of the equation, some in India believe that there is a formula for determining the exact number of warheads it would take to ensure credible minimum nuclear deterrence. Now, Pakistan doesn't seem to have such uncertainty as does India, but what it does say is that it professes that credible minimum nuclear deterrence is a fluid and not a static concept of deterrence, primarily based on the strategic forces and capabilities that India employs. Now, as this triangular deterrence picture takes shape, India is also headed from what is considered an existential deterrence, or a non-use based on fear of retaliation deterrence, to a deterrence by punishment, or a massive retaliation deterrence. So, as can be envisioned here, this triangular deterrence picture is quickly growing toward an unstoppable South Asian Cold War. To prevent such a thing from happening, I believe there's two solutions that should be attempted. The first is a mutual stationing of missile defense systems in all three states. by employing defensive missile capabilities. The hope here is that all three governments will start thinking defensively rather than offensively, and each will have the capability to survive an initial nuclear strike with the threat of like retaliation. And that really is the essence of deterrence, is it not? Making the consequences of attack too risky to attempt such an attack to begin with. Now, the second solution should be the recognition and establishment of what I call a triangular no first use agreements amongst the three. Already there are declared no first use policies in place. However, before no first use becomes something more towards a first use of necessary form, as we're kind of seeing here now with the change in policy status, formal agreements need to be developed between India, Pakistan, and China. Like I was saying, as we can see, each government is slowly changing its political stance on deterrence. Soon passive deterrence may give way to offensive deterrence. And nobody wants that. And before this happens, change must take place. By providing first a defensive mindset with the installation of missile defense systems, then the building of formal first use agreements. This will hopefully forestall a nuclear buildup and may actually start a trend towards stronger anti-nuclear agreements such as missile limitations and eventually maybe even warhead reduction. Otherwise, I don't see anywhere but towards a Cold War for this region if these solutions are not at least attempted. Thank you.